What's up, everybody? I'm Saleh, and welcome to AdoramaXP. Another year has passed, and that means it's time to vote for the Game of the Year, and Direction of the Year, and Story of the Year, and Music of the Year, and Voice Actor of the Year. Tons of stuff for the Video Game Awards on December 8th. Woo, y'all! This year was pretty lackluster. Is that safe to say? But it also wasn't at the same time. Oh, it's tough because 2022, there was going to be so many games that were going to come out this year, and they all got delayed to 2023. But we had juggernauts come out, especially in February. February, we saw tons of games being released. Sifu, Dying Light 2, which is nowhere to be seen in these categories. Horizon Forbidden West, Elden Ring, and then fast forward to July, we had Xenoblade Chronicles, then fast forward, then we had Requiem, A Plague Tale, then we had God of War Ragnarok. So we had a lot of time pass with not a lot of big games that came out, but the games that did come out this year were massive games. The craziest statistic in all of this is that Xbox hasn't had an exclusive game be nominated for Game of the Year in the past 10 years. Whoa. I mean, that's going to change next year with Starfield, one could imagine, but still, that's a pretty crazy statistic. With all of those games for Game of the Year, let's break down what they are, what they're about. If you played them, let us know, and then talk about who we think should be crowned Game of the Year. A Plague Tale Requiem, released October 17th, 2022, developed by Asobo Studio, and out on every single platform. This is a sequel to A Plague Tale Innocence. Much like the first game, it's an action-adventure survival stealth game. You play as siblings Amika and Hugo, and there are rats scattered the entire world, infecting others and causing havoc. Hugo can control these rats to an extent, and you must survive with your family and find the cure to Hugo's illness before it overtakes him. It's a gut-wrenching story and some of the best storytelling this year. Even the first one was incredible storytelling. Strong actors and animation. The graphics are absolutely stunning. You really feel for these characters, and you really want to go through this survival with them and do everything you can to hope they survive. Now, the sequel takes the first game and enhances every aspect to new combat, stronger dialogue, animation, graphics, and more. If you love the first one, the sequel is right up your alley, and it's also great to know that the first one got nominated for Game of the Year as well as the sequel, so it's continuing that trend of fantastic games. And it's easily accessible. It's on every single console and PC that you can have and own. So definitely check it out if you're into that survival stealth. Keep in mind, it is a slower paced game. It is focusing on characters, character building, world building, and storyline. That's at the forefront. Combat is kind of second to that. So if that's something you're into, definitely check it out. Elden Ring, released February 25th, 2022, developed by From Software, released on all platforms except for the Nintendo Switch. Makes sense. By God, this was the biggest game released of the year. A complete masterpiece from start to, if you ever finished it, which I did not. If you enjoy these type of games, this is incredible. Fans of Bloodborne, Demon Souls, this is for you. You will die a lot, but that's the joy of it, right? Dying a lot. The first ever open world Souls game took the franchise by storm. Much like God of War 2018 changed things up in that franchise, Elden Ring did the same. We are beginning to see a lot of IPs going toward open world with Zelda, Sonic Frontiers, and now From Software. It's the perfect vessel for this. Gamers to this day are still discovering enemies, areas, and secrets in this game. So much is to be uncovered. The layers in this are absolutely mind-blowing. Add in stunning visuals that were jaw-dropping, vistas, enemy designs, combat. This had everything a Souls game needed and even more. You would get lost in this world, and hours, days, months would go by. Now, the only issue with these games is they're not accessible to everyone. A lot of gamers don't have the time or patience to die over and over and over again, follow quests that are riddles and hard to find. But there are gamers on the other side of that absolutely love that challenge, that if you get through this, that get good mentality. Everyone tried to one-up each other. You also had incredible players became famous through their beating of bosses with no armor or not getting hit once. It's insane. This had a revolutionary impact on the gaming world in 2022 that a lot of other games didn't even come close to. Now, it's a patient game. a world you live in, not that you live and breathe this world. That was the credible part of it. Now, don't ask me the story because I couldn't even begin to tell you. But Elden Ring, whew, I mean, Elden Ring. God of War Ragnarok, released November 9th, 2022. Developed by Santa Monica Studios, exclusive to PlayStation. The only game that will come close to beating Elden Ring is God of War Ragnarok, a jump back into the world of Kratos and Atreus, discovering if they should start Ragnarok. Is Kratos still a god killer, and who the hell is Loki? Answers we get in this new installment. Combat has been improved considerably, which is wild because the first game's combat was near perfect. New weapons, new enemies, and friends. Brock and Sindri are back. Freya is as well. The dialogue in this game gave me goosebumps. We meet Odin. We meet Thor. It does a fantastic job of giving you two sides to every story, and it asks the hard-hitting questions. Are we bound to our fate, to prophecy, father and son relationships, friend relationships? Should you get into other people's business type things? The themes in this game are riveting. The graphics are insane. The game is massive, 60 hours for completionists, which is huge for a game of this size. The game is even more accessible to gamers, but it's only on PlayStation. Now, some spoilers if you haven't played the game. This game dives further into the father and son bond of Atreus, finding a way to save his father from a death prophecy. And you get to play as Atreus and get his perspective, which I think is really important. It's a story that won't be forgotten, and that's what PlayStation is so good at. But the question remains, does it beat Elden Ring? Stray, released July 19th, 2022, developed by Blue 12 Studio, released on PlayStation and PC. Man, if there was ever a game that got unlucky releasing in 2022, it's Stray. A beautiful love letter to cats and a super cute game. Stray was incredible. Learning about the lore and the world, finding out what happened, adding puzzles, and just being a cat. Knocking over stuff was the funniest thing. I absolutely love Stray, and it's going to be overshadowed by massive games like God of War, Elden Ring, and Horizon, which is sad, but it happens to these indie games. Video Game Awards always do this. They have a great indie as a nominee that most likely won't win. But what's better, being nominated and knowing you won't win, or not being nominated at all? Probably nominated, because at least you could say you got nominated. Plus, it might win Indie Game of the Year in a different category. Now, I'm very curious why Sifu wasn't nominated for Game of the Year alongside Stray, because both of those indie games were absolutely incredible. Stray brought so much life and love to a time in our lives where we needed a lot of life and love. It's been a hard-hitting couple years for a lot of us, and this was such a nice game to just sit back, relax, and be a cat. Like, what? Make a dog game. We have a goose game. Now we have a cat game. Now, there's a good chance Stray doesn't win Game of the Year. But it's nominated, and that, I think, is important, because hopefully more indie developers make games like this. Xenoblade Chronicles 3, released in July 29th, 2022, developed by Monolith Soft. And here we have our Nintendo Switch exclusive nomination, just like last year for Metroid Dread, which I don't think Metroid Dread should have been nominated, but here we are. To a game that probably should actually be nominated, just like Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was not nominated. I'm glad that this one is. And the fan base is happy that it is as well. A giant world JRPG, incredibly strong story, amazing music, memorable characters, but it's held back by the Nintendo Switch and the graphics. And as we move on to next gen, Nintendo Switch is kind of just being held back by its own design and specs. We need something that can handle the graphics. However, it does show character and story mean more than graphics, which is nice. Tons of people took to Twitter, so happy that Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was nominated because of the snubs it's had previously. And now people are in Jeff Keighley's corner saying, yes, more JRPGs should be nominated because of the grand scale of things. They've added tons of additions, the ability to switch character mid-fight, new places to explore, and it's arguably one of the greatest JRPG games out there. Now, a lot of fans were thinking this wasn't going to get nominated, and here it stands in the nomination. Will it get a bunch of votes? I could see a bunch of people voting for this and it beating Elden Ring and God of War. That would be insane. But the question remains, does it beat Elden Ring? Horizon Forbidden West, released February 18th, 2022, developed by Guerrilla Games. This took the first Horizon game and increased everything, for good and bad. Way bigger maps, more weapons, more characters, more side quests. It was very overwhelming for me. I never really got a foothold in this game. The story was pretty convoluted and it got pretty confusing. New characters were introduced, new tribes, new enemies. All of that on paper sounds great, but to me it felt like those additions didn't help the story. It didn't really help the world building. It was just there just to be there. The game felt a bit on the chore side as well. Now, what Horizon does so well is the combat, and the amount of ways you can bring down a beast is extraordinary. The amount of weapons at your disposal. But another thing, there are way too many weapons at your disposal. I needed to equip a bow set for poison and a bow set for ice, and there was rarely a bow that would do all the elements I needed. One bow would do ice, fire, and something else. Another bow would do 3 other things differently, and I was like, man, I gotta equip both of these bows, and now my entire wheel is filled with this. I spent a lot of this game in the menu, trying to find the perfect customization for the area I was in. Now, don't get me wrong, I thoroughly enjoyed this game, but it was a bit of molasses. It took some time to get through, to sift through. And that could be my fault, wanting to complete everything and being a completionist, but I feel like I stopped trying to be a completionist 40 to 50 hours in. I didn't even bother with the board game quests after a while, and to me this got that Assassin's Creed mentality, adding things for the sake of adding things. We don't need a dice or a mini board game in every game. We really don't. But all in all, it deserves a nomination, and I'm glad it's nominated. But is it going to beat Elden Ring? Now we have to decide who we think will win. God of War is the only game I can see coming close to beating Elden Ring, but even then, it's a long shot. Elden Ring did what 2018 God of War did. It completely revolutionized the franchise. It injected something new and incredible. And for Elden Ring, most likely will win because of that. Just like God of War 2018 beat out Red Dead Redemption 2 because of its revolutionizing of the IP. The amount of detail, dialogue, combat customizations in that game is mind-blowing. The lore in that game alone deserves an award. You can write scrolls of scripture with the lore of it. Both God of War and Elden Ring, they don't have the best menu interface. I'll give you that. Menus within submenus, nitpicky for sure. God of War is more linear than Elden Ring is to being an open world game, and that might scare people off. It all comes down to who gets the most votes, though. And I believe Elden Ring will probably get the most votes. More people can play that game. It was on more consoles. It broke the internet for months. Now, we all know Stray, Xenoblade, and Plague Tale most likely won't win. A Horizon included in that list. The top 3 are Elden Ring, God of War, and Horizon in that order. Now, I'd be shocked if God of War beats Elden Ring. And that's not to say God of War doesn't deserve it. And it's not to say Horizon doesn't deserve it. It doesn't say Xenoblade Chronicles doesn't deserve it. And it doesn't say Stray doesn't deserve it. Requiem. But Elden Ring deserves it more, if that makes sense. Now, Elden Ring took a bigger risk. It changed the franchise, and you have to award games that do that for trying something brand new to the franchise in itself. Now, I love God of War, and I love God of War more than I loved Elden Ring. Elden Ring was too hard for me. It wasn't my type of game, but I can acknowledge when Elden Ring should win Game of the Year. I can see that. I can know that. God of War is more my type of game, and for me personally, God of War is my vote. But for many of those out there, Elden Ring will probably be their vote. And Elden Ring, it's a game with a lot of patience. You're going to die a lot. And some people will love that get good mentality, but a lot of people might not love that get good mentality. And that's the only reason why I see it might not win Game of the Year if it's based solely on votes and more people vote Xenoblade, more people vote God of War or Elden Ring. And that's the only way I can see. But if it's based on not the majority vote and it's based on just who has the better merit of the game, then Elden Ring for sure takes the crown. Man, it's a sad year because there's so many great games that deserve it. Next year's going to be even crazier, and that's I'm not looking forward to that video because that's going to be just sad. It's going to be like, this game should take it, but this game didn't. This game should take it. Let me know in the comments who you think should win, what game you think got snubbed. I think Sifu got snubbed personally. Some people think Sonic Frontiers got snubbed. I don't think that should have been nominated for Game of the Year, but that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think. What do you think should win? Who do you think should definitely not win? Everything. Let us know your votes for the remainder of other categories. Be sure to watch December 8th for the Video Game Awards. I'm Josh Saleh. Have a great day. Peace.